Something about the way they look at you has changed, and you have noticed. I know you have noticed, because you notice everything, because that is simply how your mind works, cataloging the data that other people walk past without registering. The specific quality of an interaction that was slightly different from the last one, the way warmth was offered with a fraction less generosity than before. The moment where a compliment arrived with something underneath it that felt less like admiration and more like the performance of admiration. The pause that was a beat too long. The smile that started at the mouth but did not quite reach the part of the face that the genuine version always does. You have been collecting this data and you have been doing what Virgo does with data. It is not ready to draw a conclusion from, which is to hold it carefully, to resist jumping to the comfortable or the alarmist interpretation, to continue giving this person the benefit of every available doubt while something in your knowing has been quietly, insistently generating a picture that you have not yet let yourself look at directly. Today, I am asking you to look, because what the card showed me when I opened this energy is not ambiguous. And I think you have been ready for confirmation of what you already suspect longer than you have been willing to acknowledge to yourself. The reading is going to name some things that may be uncomfortable to receive. I am going to ask you to stay with me through all of it rather than stopping at the part that is hardest, because the part that is hardest is not the most important part. The most important part comes at the end, and it contains something you actually need to hear. Stay with me. Let me describe what I felt the moment this energy opened, because the initial impression had a quality I want to share before we go anywhere near the specific cards. I felt the particular discomfort of something that is presenting itself as one thing while being another. Not dramatically, not in a way that announces itself. The specific low frequency unease of a surface that does not match what is underneath it. The kind you feel in your body before your mind has fully articulated the source of it. Something in the quality of a relationship or a dynamic that has been claiming to be neutral or even warm while carrying something less clean underneath. I also felt something about your own position in this that I want to name carefully. I felt the specific energy of someone who has arrived somewhere, who has built something or achieved something or become something, and who is now navigating the specific social and relational consequences of that arrival among people who had organized their own understanding of themselves, partly in relation to where you were before you got here. The red flags you are sensing are not your imagination. They are the behavioral residue of someone who is internally reorganizing around the fact of your current position, and the reorganization is not producing warmth. The first card in this reading arrived in the position representing the internal state of the person whose energy I want to walk you through today, and I want to be precise about what it showed me, because the precision is what gives you usable information rather than just a general warning. This card shows a figure moving through the dark, carrying 5 swords, with a specific quality of expression that I want to describe carefully. It is not anger exactly. It is something closer to the satisfied but wary energy of someone who has made a move they believe to be advantageous and who is now monitoring the aftermath to see whether the advantage holds. The furtiveness in this card is not the furtiveness of someone who has done something impulsively and is frightened by the consequences. It is the considered furtiveness of someone who has been strategic and who is now in the specific vigilance of managing what they have put into motion. What this card tells me about the person you are picking up on is that they have been operating in relation to you from a position of deliberate rather than spontaneous response. The red flags you have been noticing are not the accidental leakage of feelings this person does not know they have. They are the occasional visible surface of something that has been thought through and chosen at some level, even if the choosing has not been fully conscious. I also want to speak to what the sword suit tells me about the domain in which this is primarily operating. Swords govern the mind, communication, narrative, the management of information, and perception. What this person has been doing is not primarily in the realm of direct action. It is in the realm of how they talk about you, how they frame you to others, what story they tell, what they emphasize and what they omit in the spaces where you are not present to participate in your own representation. The fight they wanted with you has not been the direct kind. It has been the kind that happens in your periphery rather than in front of your face. The second card appeared in the position representing the specific nature of their motivation, the why underneath the what. And this is the card I want to sit with carefully because I think understanding the motivation is more useful than simply knowing that the feeling is real. This card shows two cups exchanged between two figures, the specific imagery of genuine recognition between people who have seen each other clearly. But I want to read this card in its reversed or shadow expression for this position because what I am picking up is the distorted version of this energy rather than its clean form. The distorted version of genuine recognition is the experience of recognizing in someone else something you wanted for yourself, something you had perhaps believed was going to be yours and that has instead arrived in their hands, and responding to that recognition with the specific ache of someone who is watching from the outside of something they believed they had a legitimate claim to being inside of. The cup they see you holding is the cup they wanted. And that is the entire root of this. Not a personal dislike of who you are as a human being, not a rational grievance that could be addressed through conversation or compromise. The specific animal, involuntary response of envy, of genuinely wanting what another person has and being confronted daily with evidence that they have it and you do not, and having to manage that experience in social conditions where the direct expression of it is not available without revealing something about yourself you would prefer to keep private. I want to go one layer deeper into this because I think the specific shape of this person's envy has a texture worth naming. This is not the brief, passing variety that most people experience fleetingly and then move through. What I am sensing has been accumulating across time, building layer by layer with each new piece of evidence of your continued progress, each thing you achieved that they had been hoping might not materialize, each door that opened for you that they had perhaps been watching with the quiet hope that it would remain closed. The accumulation is what has produced the specific intensity of energy you have been picking up on. And the intensity is precisely why the management of it has become less successful over time, why the surface presentation has been holding together with slightly less precision, why the moments where the underneath has become visible have been more frequent. I want to name what this means practically because I think it is important for how you navigate this. A person who dislikes you for legitimate, specific reasons is a manageable situation. The reasons can be understood, potentially addressed, responded to with clarity. A person who dislikes you because you have something they want is a considerably harder situation to navigate because there is no action available to you that addresses the root cause without either giving up what you have or somehow making them not want it anymore. And neither of those things is your responsibility or within your power. Does this feel like it is mapping onto a real person or situation, Virgo? The specific quality of someone who presents one way but who you have been picking up something different from underneath? Leave me a comment. I want to hear how this is resonating with what you have been actually experiencing. The third card arrived in the position I read as the specific red flags this person has been displaying, the observable behavioral evidence of what the first two cards have been describing. And I want to be specific because specificity is what makes this reading actually useful rather than just validating. This card shows a figure standing amid a scene of multiple competing forces, wands crossing overhead, the quality of someone who is engaged in conflict at multiple angles simultaneously. The fire element of this suit speaks to the passionate, reactive quality of what this person brings to their opposition, and the specific number here suggests the energy of unresolved competition, of multiple parties with multiple agendas generating friction without a clear resolution. What I am reading in this card as the behavioral pattern you have been picking up on includes several specific things I want to name. First, the quality of their praise when you are being observed by others, which has a specific texture of performing something rather than genuinely expressing it. Second, the specific way conversations about your achievements get redirected slightly, not obviously enough to be called out, in a direction that introduces complicating information or diminishing context without ever saying anything that could be identified as direct criticism. Third, the energy of someone who wants to be in proximity to you in a way that produces benefit for them, while the benefit runs in a unidirectional flow that you have perhaps been noticing but not yet named. I also want to speak to the specific moment the title of this reading is pointing toward, the moment where the fight energy has been most visible, where what they have been carrying underneath has been closest to the surface. I am sensing there have been moments, probably more than one, where something in an interaction with this person produced a spike of feeling in you that was more intense than the interaction itself seemed to warrant. That spike is information. That is your very reliable Virgo perception, registering the energy underneath the presentation more fully than the presentation itself can sustain. Inhale with me, Virgo, because the fourth card is the one that I think shifts this reading from simply naming a difficult situation to actually giving you something useful to do with the information. This card shows a crowned figure mounted on horseback, moving in a direction with complete directional clarity, not turning to look at what has been left behind, not pausing to manage the impressions of those watching, simply moving. The fire element again, but at a different register. The fire of someone who has resolved their internal ambivalence about direction and who is now simply going where they are going with full, unhesitating commitment to the forward movement. What I am reading in this card for you specifically is something I want to say directly. The most powerful response available to you in this situation is not a confrontation, not a strategic counter move, not the careful management of their perception of you through adjusted behavior. It is simply doing what you have been doing, continuing to build what you have been building, continuing to arrive at the things you have been arriving at, continuing to be exactly the person who has what they wanted, not to spite them, not as a performance of being unbothered, but because that is genuinely who you are and what you have built and what you are going to continue building regardless of the feelings it produces in other people. The wand energy in this card is moving forward. It is not looking sideways. And that forward orientation, maintained with genuine commitment rather than perform nonchalance, is both the most dignified and the most effective thing you can bring to this situation. I also want to speak to something this card tends to indicate about the specific effect of your forward momentum on the person whose energy we have been examining. When someone is aching over what you have that they wanted, the most destabilizing thing you can do to their aching is to keep getting more of it. Not aggressively, not pointedly, simply through the natural continuation of being who you are and doing what you do. The distance between where you are going and where they are standing only increases with your forward movement, and that increasing distance is the universe's most honest response to their choice to focus their energy on you rather than on their own path. I want to address something about the specific challenge this situation creates for you, because I think naming it prevents you from falling into one of the patterns that Virgo sometimes falls into in exactly these circumstances. When you are very good at noticing that someone's behavior does not fully match their presentation, the temptation is to begin moderating your own behavior in response to what you have noticed, to become slightly more careful around this person, to edit what you share with them, to present a somewhat managed version of yourself that gives them less information to work with. And while some degree of appropriate discretion around someone who has revealed themselves to not be entirely trustworthy is genuinely wise, I want to be careful that this does not tip over into something that costs you more than the situation warrants. The version of you that arrived where you are, that built what you have built, that achieved what is producing this response in others, is not a version that benefits from being made smaller in the presence of people who are uncomfortable with your size. The appropriate response to someone being bothered by your success is not to be less successful in their presence. It is to be precisely as successful as you are in a way that is natural rather than performed, and to allow their discomfort to be their own, to navigate. I also want to name something about the specific exhaustion that comes with the kind of vigilance this situation has been asking of you, because I think you have been paying a cost that deserves to be acknowledged. When you know that someone's presentation toward you is not entirely honest, you begin running a background process of subtle verification for every interaction. You are not fully off guard because you cannot be. You are holding awareness of the gap between what you are being shown and what you have assessed to be true. And maintaining that awareness while simultaneously navigating ordinary interaction requires a portion of your attention and energy that you are not freely choosing to allocate there. That is a real cost. It is tiring in a specific, invisible way. And I want you to know that the tiredness you may have been feeling in relation to this person is not a character failing or an oversensitivity. It is the reasonable response of a very accurate perceiver to the sustained effort of being lied to at the surface level while knowing what is actually underneath. You are not responsible for managing their envy. You are responsible for continuing to be who you are. The fifth card arrived in the position of what is specifically important for you to understand as you move forward from this reading, the thing the cards most wanted to make sure you received before we closed. And I want to describe it with the full attention it deserves. This card shows a figure standing at the summit of something with arms raised, sun blazing behind them, the quality of someone who has genuinely, completely, in their entire body, arrived at a place they have been moving toward, who is experiencing the specific aliveness of that arrival without ambivalence or qualification. This is not a card of aspiration. This is a card of actual, present, fully inhabited arrival. What I want you to receive from this card as the final message of this reading is something I think you most need to hear in the context of what came before it. The red flags you have been picking up on, the envy they represent, the awkward, sometimes hostile energy that has been coming at you from this direction. None of it tells you anything true about the value of what you have achieved. What it tells you is that you have achieved something real enough that other people are genuinely affected by it. Genuine achievements produce genuine responses in people who wanted them. And the intensity of what you are sensing from this person is, in a sideways and uncomfortable way, a very accurate measure of how real and significant what you have built actually is. Envy is not flattery, exactly, but it is a form of accurate assessment. The people who feel it toward you are not wrong about what you have. They are simply not responding to it in a way that serves them or you. The cards are confirming what they already know, which is that you are exactly as formidable and exactly as capable and exactly as arrived as the discomfort of their response suggests. Let that in, not as a source of satisfaction at their expense, as a simple, grounded, sober recognition of what is actually true about where you are and what you have built. You have arrived somewhere real. The discomfort circling you from this direction is confirmation, delivered from the most honest possible source, which is not someone who wants to flatter you or encourage you, but someone who wanted what you have and who cannot pretend, despite every effort, that they are entirely at peace with the fact that you have it and they do not. That is the most accurate assessment of your actual position available to you, and it is being delivered without intending to by the one person in the room whose investment in underestimating you was greatest and who has now run out of ways to sustain the underestimation in the face of ongoing evidence. If this reading named something you have been sensing without quite being ready to name it yourself, please share it with a Virgo who might be picking up on similar energy from someone in their life and who needs to hear that their perception is accurate and that the way forward is not smaller but more fully themselves. And leave a comment. I want to hear what this landed on for you today. I read every single comment and I hold what is shared in this space with genuine care long after this video ends. Until next time, Virgo, the red flags were real, your perception was accurate, and what they are reacting to is exactly as real as their reaction suggests. Keep going.